I want to welcome you to the first in a series of podcasts titled Dare to Live the Life of Jesus. And this is based on the book Unpacking God for the 21st Century, a guide for growing your soul. I'm really pleased to introduce Michael Cook. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Chris.
Michael, talk a little bit about your background. How did you get to the place of writing this book?
Well, ever since I was a child, I wanted to be a missionary. I was sitting by the lake one day, and I was reading a book and about traveling to China and becoming a missionary. And I thought that would be nice if I would become a missionary. It didn't end up that way. I ended up being a writer of spiritual books. So it's a different journey, and I'm fully enjoying it. And I started writing this book actually in the late 1990s.
No kidding. So this has been a work in progress for you for quite some time.
It has been a work in progress, and writing has just been what it is. It's whenever it happens, and I don't force it. And the results are Unpacking God for the 21st Century. And yeah, it's been more than 20 years in the works.
So tell everybody about the actual title and how you came to this. Because one of the things that really surprises me about this, and we'll get into this more, but this is primarily based in Christianity. And yet we don't hear a lot of people talk about taking care of your soul. Not to say that it's not a part of Christianity, but it certainly doesn't seem to get the amount of time that you're devoting to in this book.
Well, we do talk about the soul a lot. A lot of churches do talk about the soul, but it lacks the form, it lacks the substance. It says, how do I do it? How do I live the life of Jesus? And we do talk about it, but we don't action it. And this book, Unpacking God for the 21st Century, is about action. It's about taking those baby steps so that you can live the life of Jesus. And that's why this series is called Dare to Live the Life of Jesus, because it's a challenge. And it's a challenge I'd like people to focus on. I can do it, and therefore I will challenge myself to do it in a group setting, because none of us can really do it alone. We need others around us to support us as we make this journey in life.
So, talk a little bit about, before we get into living the life of Jesus, what does it mean to unpack God for the 21st century?
Updating and modernizing. I think we're stuck in the past, and we don't talk about the issues that it confronts us today. We don't talk about the beauty of the solar system, the beauty of the galaxy, the beauty of the universe. And all of this now is updated for a new audience, a younger audience that understands that science is a part of our culture, and we shouldn't shy away from science.
It seems to me more than ever that science and religion are going down or heading toward the same endpoint, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And one's revelatory and one's based on factual, and the two will at some point merge over to say, you know what, there's more to this than what we imagine. And the facts bear out that creation is not a mythology. It is a reality, but it's based on science.
And so a big part of your book is helping people to understand that.
Yes, it is. It's more the language and the context of the language. If you have children, you ask them to read something from 1611 Shakespearean style, they're going to be confused by it.
Right.
But if you ask them, what is it in modern language you would like to see? And it's more of an update. It doesn't change the story, but it puts it in context for the 21st century.
And so from that standpoint, though, you really are focusing on a younger crowd. Is that right?
I am focusing on a younger crowd, on those who grew up with science, those who grew up with space travel, those who grew up hearing that it's okay to go to Mars, and that this is what we're going to do. It's an age of genetics engineering. And so the audience type now is for those who want to come on board and take it all in.
And what do you see as being the difference between that approach and older approaches? What do you think that has gotten lost from the old versions of the Bible and that sort of thing versus what you're trying to do? What do you see yourself as bringing to the table, especially for younger people?
For the younger people, I'm going to give you an example of the Psalms. In the Psalms, you've got blessings and cursings. And that is, to me, particularly when I look at that section of the Psalms, I see the beauty in it, but at the same time, I see the ugliness of it. Uh, and that part of the ugliness, I decided to remove that ugliness and bring it up to date and focus more on what is it that we're asking ourselves for the 21st century. So the cursings, I removed all of the cursings in the Psalms. And that to me is more poetic than it is to say, yeah, but it doesn't negate the Bible in any way, shape, or form. It's more of a modern approach to looking at things.
It seems to me that one of the things that Christianity in general has struggled with is how to make this transition and how to, especially in today's day and age, how to appeal to this younger audience in a way that they really relate to and feel connected with. Isn't that right?
Yes, it is. Now, in the book, what you'll find is a series of parables that fits the criteria for today. And in those parables are stories, and those stories, if you're looking for it, you'll find the gem of truth. Now, all of this can be searched in the Bible and found in the Bible in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But to have it being told in your language for today, to have it relate to issues of today, and that is the difference that I'm bringing with the book.
I think it's something that's desperately needed, especially for the younger generation who I think they also relate to the idea of soul and a little bit more on the spirituality side. And if I understand what you're trying to do, what you're really working to do is to bring that spiritual nature to a younger audience.
And that is correct, Chris. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, is to bring that spiritual nature. A lot of young people don't even go to church anymore. So if you ask them, what is a church looks like for them, they don't go to regular services. And it's not a shame or anything, but in the context of it, they're still searching. And if they're still searching, they need those questions answered in a way that they can relate to. So it is for the unchurched also, that you don't have to walk into a church to understand this.
I think it's so powerful, and I commend you for recognizing that things have changed, and the way that young people look at the world is different for so many good reasons. Right? It's not that they don't seek those same questions that the Bible set out to handle years and years ago, and it still works for so many people. But this is really something that addresses today's need, isn't it?
Yes, it does address today's need in the way, in one of the stories or the parables, we're dealing with genetic engineering. We're dealing with what happens when you have a designer baby. What's the moral and implications, and what's the ethical concerns? So the story fleshes out our moral and ethical dilemma in dealing with today's issue of genetic engineering and that of parental choice. And issues like that are in the book, but they're told in a story form that if you follow along the story and make the story become real for you, then you have to ask the questions. Is this the road our societies are going down? And can we stop it before it happens?
And where do you land on that in general? What's your sense of where things are going in that direction, and is it okay?
Well, we have moved really far in the genome, in the quest for blueprinting our genetics. But the real question I pose in the book, what are we going to use it for? Are we going to be using it for advancement of war? Are we going to be using it for the advancement of society? And there is that gap in between the uses of what do we want this technology to do for us? Is it to save life or is it to create destruction? So in the story, it follows a geneticist, and how this geneticist has used um, her knowledge of genetic engineering to foster what we call class system. In the class system that I've portrayed in the stories, it is a wealth. It's wealth or lack of wealth. There's no middle class anymore. You're either rich or poor.
Mm-hmm.
And the rich is able to genetically engineer their children for the best education. They're able to manipulate the genes to get a higher IQ. And then if you cannot afford it, then you're basically in one of the masses to be used as a guinea pig or a tool.
It sounds a little scary.
It is scary, but we do have choices. And that's what I'm trying to bring out in the book, is that we do have choices, but we must exercise those choices, not and wait for the future to unfold, but we must exercise those choices now and start our discussion of what are we going to use this technology for? Is it going to be for good, or is it going to be for evil?
Right. And so I take it that the answer to this in large part is what it means to live a life like Jesus.
Exactly.
So talk a little bit about how that is the solution and what that means.
Okay, having gone through the Bible, and I mean literally cover to cover, and having focused on the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and looking at that section alone, and when you see how Jesus actually lived, how he actually forgave people, how he does not condemn people, how he actually meets and greets everyone and treats everyone equally, then the question becomes to, why can't I live that life? Why can't I be challenged to live that life where I am going to forgive, where I am going to heal, I'm going to help others? And in a bigger context of society, are we our brother's keeper? Are we going to be divided as a society, or we're going to try to unify around a purpose and a cause?
And so in terms of living the life of Jesus, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? What are you helping people to see? Because I think where you're headed is so vitally important, especially in today's day and age, to find that forgiveness, to greet everybody, to have this perspective that Jesus had, right? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis for people that are reading this?
On a day-to-day basis, actually comes out to saying no a lot. This is personal choice. And as you know, as a young child, a 2-year-old, their first words are no, no, no. But as a mature adult, our choices are no, because it's the right thing to do to say no.
Mm-hmm.
So in a situation where a child will say no because they want to get their own way, we're saying no because that's not the right way to do it. Let's follow the way Jesus did. And if we're going to do that, we're going to end up saying no a lot of the times, but for the right reasons.
So what are the things that you think we're going to say no to more often and rightfully so?
We're going to say no when our conscience is pricked, and to say, you know what? That person over there has hurt me. I should not forgive them. I should carry that burden. And so I'm going to say no. I'm not going to hold that grudge. I'm going to say no to, I'm not going to take it personally when somebody insults me. I'm going to say no, that if somebody says turn the other cheek, what does that really mean? It means that I'm there to show you an example of how you can live. So I think turning the other cheek has also been misunderstood. It doesn't mean that you're a wimp or anything. It just means that you're going to take an approach to say, you know what? I'm going to react non-violently to you. I'm not going to give in to you. So I'm going to take the high road and walk the high road. And that's saying, no, I'm not going to come down to your level.
And when you look at that, because I don't know anybody that doesn't struggle with this in one way or another, whether they recognize it or not, what are the things that you suggest to people that they carry in order to be able to have that approach, to be forgiving, to not be judgmental? How do we begin to really practice that?
The art of practicing that, I'm going to be honest, we can't do it alone. I mean, it's for a human being to be separated from God in the sense that we're going to think we're going to do this on our own without divine assistance. The answer to that question is upfront no. That's why a prayer and meditation is part of it, in saying, God, lead me to do the right thing. God, help me to do the right thing. I'm putting it in your hands so that when those choices come up, at least I am aware that I have to make a decision. But it's not possible for us to do this on our own, because our human instincts is for our own survival and personal benefit.
And so, with prayer and meditation, how do you see that applying and really driving people's ability with that help to be more forgiving, to be less judgmental?
It's in Christian terms, it's called surrendering to God's will. It is my will that your will be done. In other words, it's a conscious choice you're making to have God guide you and lead you towards that end goal. Um, and it is a conscious choice of putting your life in the hands of God, so to speak, in a traditional sense, to say, you know what, I can't possibly do this as a human being on my own, but with your help, I will become stronger at doing this. And so it's a reliance or a dependence upon, I'm going to trust instinctively that the right thing will come to me. And we're going to make mistakes. No doubt, in any way, shape, or form, we're not going to get this right. Even if we try 70 or 700 times, we're going to get it wrong. But it's to forgive yourself first and move on.
Boy, it's a really important one not to bypass is the whole part about forgiving ourselves and being able to move on. Talk a little bit about why that's so important.
One of the things that psychologists have figured out, and psychologists know this, when we hold things in, it's not harming the other person, it's harming ourselves internally, emotionally. And so if we don't release it, it's not the other person that has no idea or no clue what you're going through, but you're holding it in for your own detriment to your own health. It changes everything within the body, and therefore, don't hold it in, let it out, because that person is not even aware that they've hurt you. So you can't keep holding it in.
And it really is carrying a burden, isn't it?
It is a burden. It is a burden on us to hold it in, because we personalize it, we take it the hard way, and we can't get past it. And we carry something around for years and years and years, saying, you know what, this family hurt me or this person hurt me. And it's eating internally at us without even us becoming aware that we're damaging ourselves.
And the antithesis of that is that I figure out a way to have this connection to God, to feel this knowledge and wisdom, to be able to forgive myself, to forgive somebody else. And the result of that is pretty dramatic, not only for the person that's practicing this, but for everybody around them, isn't it?
It is. And one of the great examples in the Bible, in the New Testament, is the woman caught in adultery. And that woman, although she was caught in adultery and she's about to be stoned, and Jesus wrote in the sand, and one by one his accusers fell away. And then he asked her, who was left to cast the stone? And there was no one left. He says, go about your business. And again, because God does not hold us or condemns us for making mistakes because we're human beings, we should also likewise forgive others for their mistakes, because we're going to make the same mistakes or another mistake. So we're judging ourselves harshly also when we don't forgive.
It is such a powerful message that I've been trying to create that same forgiveness in myself and for others for years and years. And what I've found is that even though it's hard to do all the time, just the practice of it does make it easier and does create a difference, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's that practice of it. It's that never giving up. It is that fight. It is that dare to live the life of Jesus, which is really a dare. You're challenging yourself to say, you know what? Hey, I'm in this for the long haul, and I'm not going to be pushed into doing something. I'm not going to be pushed because somebody hurt me to respond in a negative way. I'm going to rise above that. And yes, you may respond in a negative way and you may do it over and over. But again, that persistence and keep going, even if you're knocked down at it, that will make a difference because you're not alone in this journey.
One of the things that I think a lot of people have difficulty with, especially that are younger, is this idea of connecting to God. And one of the things that you said earlier was it's about praying, it's about meditating. Talk a little bit about what it means to you to have that connection with God and what it's like. In other words, I think a lot of younger people think that it's, oh, God should be talking to me or something like that, and they don't have that experience. Talk about it from your perspective, what it means to have that connection with God in my life on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, I'll simply point out what is said in the book. It is a feeling. It is not, it's a feeling and a knowing. And because it's a feeling and a knowing, it can't be proven because it's internal to you. You know you're okay and you feel that you're okay. And therefore, that trust becomes automatic. Now, and it does take years to get to that stage where of getting over doubt, getting over, is God still love me even if I made a mistake? Does God really care? And and it's just an internal sense that, yeah, I feel the presence of God in me. I can't prove it, but I know I'm going to be okay. And to answer the other part of your question, in the journey of meditation and prayer, it is the art of letting go. It's the art of saying, not only am I okay, but I want my neighbor to be okay. And when you do your meditations, just set yourself apart. I don't care, like 5 hours of TV doesn't cut it. 10 hours of being on the internet doesn't cut it. You need to give some time to God for reflection in order to make this happen. You need to give up something and exchange something for that quiet time.
And the power of that time is dramatic, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And that time alone, that whether it's 4 o'clock in the morning, whether it's 8:30 at night, or whether you know what you're going to say, I'm going to skip this basketball game tonight because I feel I need to get into that place. And that's a hard thing to do when your sports and other activities are competing for your time. But it is what I would call, hear the call of that withdrawal from your surroundings, even for 10 to 15 minutes a day. And that makes a huge difference in your life.
I don't think you can understate that, can you?
No, I know for my own self, I do what is called an annual retreat, and I go away for a weekend. No noise, no cable, nothing of distraction from our society, and so therefore I'm basically tuned out for an entire weekend, and I really don't follow what's going on until I leave. And I could miss anything or major events, but it doesn't matter. You are tuned out for that one weekend a year.
And so going back to this whole idea of the feeling and the knowing, it's this sense that I have a connection to something that's greater than just me. And in that connection, there's an incredible knowing, there's an incredible feeling of being part of something bigger, isn't there?
Yes, there is, but there's even one step beyond that. And once you get there, you're going to find out something. I need to do more for others rather than myself. And that's where the journey really becomes more what I call a self awareness, that you know that you've got God with you, but it's more than just God. Now you want to care about your neighbor. Now you want to care about your society. Now you want to care about your community. And it's pushing it up to that level where the book is really going to be focused heavily on. It's that community where we're not alone in this, because if our society collapses, we've only got each other. If there's a storm and half your community is washed away, we've only got each other. And it's that reliance to say, I've got to be there for my neighbor as well.
So we're getting close to the end, but let's wrap up with two questions. First of all, there are a lot of people that are going to listen to this and share it, and people are going to say to the people that share this, you know, living the life of Jesus, it's just not something that's possible, especially in today's day and age. Talk a little bit about why it is and how it is and what the result of living the life of Jesus is.
Let's start with the results. The results of living the life of Jesus is in fully transformed community and our society. It's scary to think that if we actually live it in principle and follow it along, we're going to transform our society. We're going to transform the way we do things. We're going to be looking at our community more as an integrated community rather than myself alone, rather than me, myself, and I. That's the first part. As how we get there, we need to focus on others who have the same bent, who have the same understanding, and form our own community groups. So we can't do this alone by ourselves. What we can do alone is to make our personal choice. But to transform and to change society, we need an entire community to be on board.
And how does that come about? How do you see us getting to that point, Mike?
We have to talk about the issues. We really have to talk about, I know that we talk about environmental issues. I know that we talk about climate change. I know we talk about the spiritual, but we're all talking not to help each other, but we're talking over each other. We have to start talking over each other and say, yeah, you know what? This is a community issue and we need to solve it, but we need to solve it with God's help, not just trying to figure out how we're going to solve it on our own, or two or three people are going to solve it. We need a broader base. When Jesus started out with 12 apostles, it was a good community. So let's call these 12 apostles a community. And they in turn took that community elsewhere and spread it. So we need to create a community that can harness the spiritual power that's latent within us.
And how does, because I think this is one of the things that people really struggle with, is how does this work from the standpoint, yes, we want a community of people that are like-minded, but we're always going to have people that have different religions, different perspectives. How do you manage that in as the group of like-minded people? It's about forgiveness, I take it, and other things, but talk about how you kind of deal with all the differences that are out there.
You accept the differences of people. You cannot change people, and nor can you be expected to change people. We have to accept the differences of people, and our common unity is a spiritual one. It's not the flowers, the birds, they're all different species. They all work together. They all are beautiful when in harmony in nature. So we really have to find out not what my difference and your difference is, but what do we have in common and what do we achieve our commonality. Our differences will not go away. So it's just to accept those differences. They're not going to go. It's like a marriage. Two people get married, they're going to have different views coming into the marriage, but it's to accept each other different points of view. And that's where we begin.
And really, when it comes down to it, when you have this connection to God, when you have this ability to forgive, to be non-judgmental, when you behave like Jesus did, that allows people to almost begin their own journey down a similar path, doesn't it?
Yes, Chris, and that is correct. It does begin down their path. And it is like a herd. You start out with one or two people, but as the herd grows, it inoculates each other to know the right thing to do. And we self support each other, helping each other to encourage each other to do the right thing. And yes, we accept the failures and not outcast somebody because they failed once or twice or three times or 70 times seven, as um, as the apostle Peter had asked Jesus. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. We're looking at this at the long term. I will help you and we will all grow together.
Uh, it is such a different message than we hear from society, especially in America, on a day-to-day basis, isn't it?
It is, but we're at the point in our society where if we're not minding the shop, so to speak, our society will fall backwards. And this is at the stage right where we are now of making a choice. Do we fall backwards and become barbarian in the real sense of the word? Is that we become uncouth, unruly? Or do we say, you know what, enough is enough? There's a right way and there's a wrong way. Let's move our society forward as opposed to backwards. And leadership begins with us. It does not begin anywhere else but with us. Personally, we have to take leadership for ourselves and our society and our community. If each of us becomes our own little leader to say, yeah, this is my choice also. I do not want to go backwards, so I'm going to make that choice for myself to go forward. If we can individually make those choices, we're going to transform our society.
I think that anybody who is in the process of looking realistically at what's going on around them in this day and age, looking at what's happening with science, looking at religion from a fresh perspective, and really the basics of, prayer and acceptance and forgiveness and being non-judgmental, all those basics apply now more than ever, don't they?
Yes, they do. And the reason why they apply now more than ever is because of all the pressures our society is facing, from robotics, from engineering, genetic engineering, from what I would call um, the leadership vacuum at the top.
Hmm.
All of those things are pressure on our society. And if they're not corrected, we'll go back to becoming sort of like the Wild West where every person does their own thing. So we do need a collective push forward. And this book will give that collective push forward if we understand it and if we're willing to take the time and the effort to follow along with it and see where it goes. And we make the effort to say, yeah, you know what? I want to be part of that new wave.
Michael Cook, you are the author of Unpacking God for the 21st Century, a guide for growing your soul. And this has been the first in a series of podcasts titled Dare to Live the Life of Jesus. Michael, one last thought. What do you want your listeners to know more than anything else?
What I really want the listeners to know right now is that we can transform our society. It's not too late. You hear a lot of people panicking that, oh, climate change is going to do this and all of this is going to come to an end and the world is going to come to an end and crash. No, we have control. It's time to take leadership in our hands.
And that starts with each one of us individually, doesn't it?
It does, very much so, Chris. It does start with each one of us personally making that decision of participation.
Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, for taking the time over, 30-ish years to put this book together in a way that really makes sense, especially for today's generation.
Thank you for your time, Chris.
And so one of the things that's really important to know is where to get this book, Unpacking God for the 21st Century. If you go to Amazon.com and type in Unpacking God for the 21st Century, up will come that guide for growing your soul by Michael Cook. So be sure to check out the book, and we will be back with another Dare to Live the Life of Jesus podcast soon.